Alright, welcome. You're with Jonno today, or tonight in fact. It's late. This is a test. It's not the first time I've ever done this, but it's the first time I've done it deliberately. What we're trying to do is we are trying to take you for a walk through all of the properties currently listed in Dunedin. Now, to do that, it's going to take a little bit of experimentation. We have three main sites that all the properties are listed on. We have obviously homes.co.nz, there's realestate.co.nz, and of course Trade Me, Property Insights, etc. That said, we're just wanting to have a brief look and an overview. So who am I? Building consultant, really, loosely. I've been doing building inspections for rather a long time. I think I did my first few in about 2008. So a bit of a veteran in the game. I've looked at many thousands of houses, and streaming, yeah, that's newer to me, but let's just see what we can do. Let's have a look at the properties that are listed, and let's go from there and see if my scenes work. Woo. Okay. Oh, actually, no, we'll give you the headshot as well, because why not? You get to see my emotion as I look at it. Okay, so we have already set up the three websites we're going to look at with the listings from today. Now, listings happen every time. I'm just going to do today's ones today because that's nice and easy. So let's just start right here. And right here, Ganesh, 1, 2, and 3. Okay. 63 Eglinton Road from Ned, Taylor and Strong. Now, what we have is, technically this is going to be a bungalow. You can tell that because it's got the wraparound deck. You can see my mouse moving on. It's got some features that actually make it more of a villa. So your centralized chimneys, yeah, that's more of a villa thing than not. But let's have a look here. Without looking at any real detail, what we can see, they've got a roof which has been replaced, but not super recently. You can see that slight sign of oxidation happening on the roof there. Now, that's not a bad thing. The roof itself is highly unlikely to leak as a result of that. What this tells me, that tells me it's a colour steel roof. It tells me it has been replaced. And likelihood is it's all been done at once, which is good. That's what we want to see. The other things we can see, of course, are sharp paint lines, sharp walking up, sharp garden. Now, that, of course, puts an idea in your head. The next things we can see from a building perspective is you've got these nice glass balustrades. Now, the thing we know for sure is timber is much, much, much cheaper. This is glass. They've spent a bit of money doing this. In fact, they've got steel running around as a handrail as well, which is great. So the risks you have with glass balustrades is that the top edges of tempered glass are often a weak point. So I like to put a little plastic capping on those, and that's just to give them a little bit of protection, because worst case is that somebody with a big heavy ring or something in their hand that's metal leans on one of those glass, and next thing you know, you've got 10 million pieces. It's not common, but it's not uncommon either. Other points to note, when I look at this deck, what I see is it hasn't been oiled in rather a long time. Now, oiling or staining your deck is going to preserve it for a lot longer, so it's worth doing that. Flooring has been probably relatively recently resanded and sealed. Kitchen, you try and put a few things together looking at a kitchen. I mean, obviously they've spent some money on this one. You can see the lights look like LEDs from here. Relatively new hardware. If I had to guess from the blue and everything else, you'd say this has probably been done maybe a good 10, 15 years ago. Inside, we have a gas fire in place of one of the chimneys, so that probably means it's flued up and through. The fact that it's condensed out down there probably means it's one of the things you need to think about is servicing. All your gas appliances need to be serviced every few years, and in the ideal world, wherever you have gas, think about having a carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide alarm. The rest of it is just showing the signs of a fairly tidy house. Now, one thing I can't see in here is whether they have extractor fans or not. Clawfoot bath, shower, corner shower. Shower is the main thing to be aware of in bathrooms in general, is that silicone lasts about 5 years. Every 5 years you're going to want to get through there and replace the silicone. We've got this big space out the back. Now, obviously with a beam over there, we presume that that's been opened up at some point or other. So what we're going to check when we're in there is there any bowing or sagging in the beam? We can't see any evidence of it from the photos, but we just want to keep an eye on that. Same thing with another shower. You're going to check your silicone down the edges. And this has got the good upstand lip, which is more protective. You tend to get less leaks on these sort of shower trays. Can't quite see exactly what the joinery is there, but it looks like double glazing to me from here. The black edge that you see there would be a giveaway. So pretty cool location. You definitely got a utility over there. You've got car parking. You've got access up the deck. That's looking pretty good, timber. And you can see your internal gutter. One of the other things you'd be very aware of is cleaning on the internal gutter down here. Okay, some steps. Same thing again. Any timber, especially there's probably macro carpet. It's got 15-year in-ground durability. You can extend that if you stain or oil it on a regular basis. It looks like we might have a bit of a flat roof over here on the garage. Again, keeping that clean. Anytime you get leaf or whatever build up on there, it's going to do some damage. So, hey, that's pretty cool. We got one out of the way. A bit slower than I would have liked, but that's okay. Next one we come to here, Ganesha's listing, 59 Council Street. What can we tell you about this? Interesting point to note, you see slightly different bricks and mortar there. Now, it's possible that is still original and they were just going for the highlight look, but it's equally possible that they had a front veranda and then walled it in to make a sunroom, although I noticed that the bay window there matches. So I think they might well have been trying for a feature on this one. So let's just pull up the main pics. They spent a bit of effort in the driveway by the looks, and certainly the fence and everything outside. You've got the wee flat above the shed out. Original fittings. Kitchen's been upgraded. Again, opened space through there. So we're always going to want to check things like structural stability of what they've done, whether they've got a consent for opening it up or not. So in the limb, it's going to tell you if there's a consent. Now, just because it doesn't have a consent doesn't mean it's illegal. It really depends if it's a load-bearing wall or not, which if you've put a beam in, you must presume it is, but there's no absolute guarantee. Fireplaces, the main things we want to check on fireplaces are actually the seals around the edges. We want to check the flue. We want to check all those sorts of details. The things to be aware of, sometimes where you've got a fireplace going through, you get a bit more expansion contraction in the ceiling than you might do otherwise, which can lead to a little bit of buckling or cracking. So keep an eye on that. It's not mission critical, but you need to delineate that from any leaks. Because the flue expands and contracts, sometimes you get a bit of a leak through the witch's hat on the roof. So it's not uncommon that that happens, and it's generally a relatively easy fix with a bit of silicone. Stained glass windows, a lovely touch, by the way. Flooring, everything else is new. Now, heat pump up super high like that, what that's going to do is it's going to be a struggle to remember to clean the filters. And I say that just having cleaned my filters tonight. What I try and suggest people do is put a reminder in their phone. The filters really want to be cleaned every 2 weeks, and the heat pump wants to be serviced every 2 years. Good to see this little cupboard down here. That means that the hot plate is not directly against the wall. Yes, that's heat-proof surround with tiles, but nonetheless, that little bit of a gap is really quite beneficial, certainly if you do manage to set a pot on fire or something like that. It just gives you that little bit more window of space. Obviously, wherever you have an extractor fan, use it while you're cooking. That will save a lot of repainting hassle. All of the drawers look to be clear of the doors, which is good. What else can we see here? Some new lighting all around the place, so they've done a reasonably good job of tidying this one up. There's a bit of a dark room. Obviously, sunrooms like this, a little bit tricky to find a real good utility for, but as an office, they're generally pretty good. Always like to make sure that they've got significant opening windows, and that's just a comfort thing. You want the ability to get fresh air into your space. Shower glass splash screens are fantastic things. They really do save a lot of damage down in here, where if you've just got a shower curtain, those can really get a lot of water on them. Things to check is silicone right around the perimeter, certainly of the bath, but ideally around the whole bathroom. Note the extractor up there. I can't tell what it is from here, but there is one. They've even put lighting in the deck down here. So again, that's the little touches. They've stained all that timber works. Fantastic. And then we've got this wee unit above the shed. So you've got some gas, hot water somewhere in there. The one thing you'd have to say about that is you'll probably find that the handrail effectively running up here is too low for modern rental Tenancies Act standards. So if you want to rent this out, you probably want to uplift that a little bit. The next thing we can see, of course, from here is you've got the central mullion down there with the casement windows. That means that you're likely to have a ground level from here up to there. That should be more than a metre, so you don't need to worry about putting security stays on those. Things that I'm going to check on this part are the parapet wall up here, both the flashing and actually the integrity of the parapet itself. Oftentimes those can be single brick. If it is single brick, then there's a small risk that it comes loose. You can fix that with straps and ties and just making sure the mortar stays in good condition if you need to, but just check it. Overhead, that's either power or phone, I'm not quite sure from here. With a nice simple bathroom layout and nice simple kitchen. Lighting and everything's good. Heat pump in and over there, so it's a fairly large heat pump. I can't see the condenser, but I would expect that to be somewhere between a 5 and 7 just by size. Sometimes you get a little bit of weeping through these glass blocks. Things you can do about that is just seal the grout. Again, decking and clothesline and so forth. So they've spent some good effort on landscaping. That's always nice to see. What you can see here on the roof is that is an older roof. We don't know whether it's original or slightly newer than, but it's still short run iron. Now that puts it back to 50s, 60s maybe. After that they sort of started moving towards long run for the most part. Good location for the condenser, for the heat pump. It's up and out of the way. It's going to get good airflow, so it can make good use of a heat differential. Again, do remember to get it serviced. Flat roofs, generally not too much of an issue, and these are generally slightly outside the core building envelope anyway. So flashings, you don't have fantastic flashings in here, but you see the step back there. That implies that we're brick, stucco, plaster brick. Keep the stucco in good order. If it starts to fail, you can sometimes get water in behind it, which will help to peel it off faster. Now, that doesn't tend to compromise the waterproofness too much, unless there is exposed timber further down. But if you keep it in good order, a stitch in time saves 9. Cool. 201 signal help. Now, I actually know a bit about this one because I've already done a building inspection on this property, but we'll walk through it nonetheless. So handrails, balusters and everything else outside. Timber, again, keep it stained. We have a conservatory here. I haven't seen a limb for this property, so I'm not sure on the legality of all of the above, but it's the deck they certainly spent some effort on. What we did have in a few spots throughout the house was a little bit of borer and floorboards. Not uncommon, and to be honest, it's not mission critical unless they crack and break when you're walking on them. Windows and everything else, I mean, there's room to thermally improve the house. There's certainly room to look at the kitchen and do that, but you do have all the core elements there. There's been some adjustments to the cabinetry up there, which a little bit strange, but hey, probably for a microwave. Narrow kitchen benches, that's one of the older features. So we used to do about a 540 kitchen width, and then we've decided on about a 620 as the standard now. 620 bench top down to 600 for the cabinets. Which sometimes if you've got big platters you'll certainly notice. Lots of smoke alarms throughout this house, and narrow passageway. It's looking quite light here actually. Bedroom. So what we can see here is obviously older Ceratone by the looks. I can't remember that off the top of my head. But again, shower curtains. Not much of a fan of those. Glass splash screens work much better. And I'm not sure whether we have an extractor in there from memory. On the plus side, if you go to Prosperbuild.com, I'll make sure that that's online in the next day or so. And you're able to purchase it. In fact, use the coupon code LIVESTREAM for a discount. Downstairs room. Now this is interesting space. It's all quite dry, which is really quite cool. Step up into the laundry, short little head height room, but it's a utility room. That is actually okay. No leaks or anything from the wet stuff. As I say, this house I'm entitled to be a bit different on because I have already looked through it with the intention of making it publicly available. Handrails up and down are really quite good, and you certainly have fairly good access around the house, but you do have this decent climb to get up and out. That means you've got privacy. You've also got fantastic views. You've got power out to the garage, which, be careful, just beware it's there, and it is just a suspended wire. It's up there and it's doing okay, but in the ideal world it'd be a bit higher and it'd probably be in conduit, or underground in conduit would be good too. So there's your garage up there, power wire runs from the front out. So you can see you've got some good bracing down here for your deck. You've got a bit of retaining around the place. It's effectively really terracing. There's a little bit of retaining proper down here from memory. which is not super flash, but if it fails, there's no cost to the house. That covers that home. So we've gotten through 3 houses in approximately 15 minutes. What we're really trying to do here is just give you an overview. We're going to put this one up. It's an experiment. 16 minutes in. We've got an hour that we could do. Let's just do a real quick overview of the rest without actually digging in and through that deep. So what we're going to find here, now this is one I actually have on my to-do list. There's a reasonable chance that our gable ends in this property are an asbestos-containing material. And it's just because of the vintage that we can say that. Concrete tile. Concrete tile is generally pretty good as long as it's kept coated. Once they start getting waterlogged, they get a bit heavy. Not a huge rule, but we don't tend to touch commercial too much, especially not where it's in this sort of space where you've got a strata title. Interesting that Real Estate Mid-Canterbury would be selling a place in Dunedin, but no, that's okay. Comments about flats really is just understand the legality of what you're buying and what your maintenance implications are. Who's responsible for what? 21 Roy Crescent. I don't know who's got that listed. Deadline sale. So that's a 60s-ish vintage. Relatively shallow roof does make access up and down a little bit challenging, but also helps to keep them relatively warm by comparison. Big 1.5, 2 car garage down there. Good new concrete driveway. So that's actually looking pretty tidy. What we're going to be checking is the retaining wall down here. Hip. We want to check the hips. Oftentimes they'll rust a bit faster than other things. Again, he's vacant, so no, he's not. It's just in the process of moving out. So we've got some bracing for our deck on the lower floor there. That's good to see. Lots of space, which is even better. Garage, back edge of garage. So sloping section. On a sloping section, there's always a chance you might get some water popping up. Just bear that in mind and deal with it as it comes, and really keep an eye on it. This looks like the old statey. Yeah, probably is. So the cool thing about statey houses is they use selected lengths of timber. And the timber was generally actually really good. So it holds up really well. Warming them up isn't too hard. In the ideal world, you insulate the exterior walls, but insulation on the subfloor and ceiling will make a big difference. If it's original, it's probably still got, firstly, relatively narrow stairwells, but you can cope with that. If it's original, it's probably still got concrete tile, but that looks like not concrete tile, which is fantastic. Yep, so that's long run steel. They've replaced the roofing on that. Easy peasy. And by putting this little pergola out here, you've sort of walked away a little bit from the statey image. So lots of potential to make that nice tidy, do stuff with it. What else do we have? That's yesterday. Oh, we're down to yesterday already. Fantastic. Hold on. Oh, 11 o'clock. We're still good. Victoria. Ooh, that's erring on the side of a grand bungalow. So 2 sides, full walk around, and really quite cool features in these. And again, very simple to see the building inside and out, to see what's been changed or hasn't. That's quite a big space for one of these. So there's every chance that a room has been opened up somewhat. There's your big original lounge, and we know it's original lounge because you've got the ornate ceiling. So we talked about fireplaces before. Take that. So we have the wet floor shower, so we want to double check again on our limb that they have appropriate consents, membranes, everything else in there. But they've spent some money. They've gone a little bit left of centre with tiles in the phone orientation rather than the widescreen orientation. Quite a cool setup. And in terms of the simplicity, I quite like the simplicity here. You've simply got the glass splash screen, then your shower. The less things to go wrong, the better. And that's simple, so less things to go wrong. Shower over bath in there. Didn't tile all of the walls, left some partially tiled. Yeah, it means you can change paint colour and actually change the feel quite easily. Inbuilt shelves. Now with a house of this vintage, I'm expecting possibly a little bit of undulation in the floor, but realistically, as long as it's less than about 30 mil over the length of the house, we don't really have any issues. This house is going to be near on 100 years old. What we're going to be checking is around the foundation areas of the concrete there. We want to check for cracks and whatnot. Sometimes you get superficial cracks that don't go right the way through. When a crack becomes a problem is when it's uneven. Small crack at the top, big crack at the bottom means that there's a massive pressure point or sideways movement. So if the crack moves like that, you've got a problem. If you don't have any of those, that's fine. There's no need to do anything. You don't need to replace your piles every 50 years just because some insurance company or bank said you might need to. Okay, we're going to walk away now from homes and we're going to wander off to real estate. So we're looking for houses listed today. 51 Aotea Street. Oh, that's another one I actually know. I don't know if that's listed today actually. They've done a really good job there. There is a few things to work through, just legalities, but be some minor changes. But Alice will be able to tell you all about that anyway. Driveway is pretty impressive. It's nice and wide. If you resurfaced it wider, it might make it access simpler, but I think there might have some stairs up the side, I can't remember. They've certainly seriously expanded the house over time, and there's still room to make even more usable space if you desperately want. Very tidy. What work they have done is quite good. Barra Street, Kenmure. Struggling to visualise that. So this is, oh yeah, here we go. So lean-to, that means it's a early-ish villa, pitched roof and everything else. Single fire chimney left that we can see. There might be another one down the back there. Same thing, internal gutters, keep those clean and clear. Looks like we might be a little bit stucco, so we just want to check the adhesion on that stucco. Oh, yep. Very, very cool location, actually. So you just want to check that stucco adhesion, keep the paint in good order. See, barges want a bit of paint there, and all of this ornate scroll work, keep that well painted, and it will serve you for a long time. If you let it rust, then you start to have issues. It'll rust through the screws and spread stains and so forth. Still original timber roofing and whatnot, so that floor's been prepped. Not sure whether they used to have vinyl or carpet in there. Oh, it might be just cleaned, actually, carpet. Yeah, it's just carpet cleaning runs. Okay, so some ornate portions. You see that little bit of a undulation there. Again, the house is going to be 120 years old at least, so you're expecting a bit of that. Concrete, it's good. Fencing's good. The shed, you're not really holding high hopes for much in the way of fantasticness from a shed like that. If you can tidy it up, make it good, you're doing well. It's been there for forever and a day, and the odds of it falling over all by itself, if left, are very high. It's just a matter of when. But, you know, the odd little stick of timber here and there, a little bit of additional remedy where any water might be getting in or things like that, will actually make these stay up for an awful long time. Okay. Street, Kenmure, Glencairn. Now this one, okay, hold on. We've gone to real estate. Yep, no, that's right. Oh, what's going on? It's gotten rid of our latest showing today. So again, stucco with this one is going to be a biggest thing to really check. Make sure that it's still well adhered. It may well, given the vintage and style, be full stucco. So 35mm, 40mm coat all the way from original. Already looked at that one. This one looks quite interesting to me. Not sure if it's a lockwood or not, but either way. Big, ornate, exposed macro carpet. You can keep the oil up on those unless you really like the grey look. It will make a slight difference to the longevity, but the look, once you lose the fresh timber look, it's very hard to gain it back. Whether it's a carport or just a sitting space that's protected, I don't know. Looks semi-modern. We've got a few pictures here. Some of that landscaping is certainly newer. Sheds is good. Ooh, wow, okay. So DC voltage wiring for the lights there. That's quite interesting. I mean, you still get high output with the halogens, but means theoretically you can get a teensy tingle if you touch them too, but it is low voltage, so it's not going to hurt you. Really good to see here the wider range hood. That's going to get rid of a lot more than one that's the same width as the oven would. And aluminium to ground is looking pretty good. probably double glazing. Simple construction. Now that doesn't give a huge amount of room for insulation, but this is probably new enough that you still got at least an R3.2 in there. Plinth for the fire. Mixed bag plinth for the fire. It does mean that you don't get necessarily as much heat down low. The things to be aware of with these fires is, for the most part, they're actually infrared radiators as opposed to hot air makers. But running long enough, they do make hot air, so this will be effective. Bear in mind, a high-speed fan is going to compress the air, which cools it slightly. So sometimes you're better with a bigger fan that runs much slower. You've got this heat transfer, normal drop ceilings in there. Shelving is good. Landscaping, I mean, not a huge amount to say about that one. It's going to be fairly simple, fairly straightforward. And you really probably just have some paint to do, I think, to keep it good in the meantime. All of your exterior components, your aluminiums and steels and so forth, will break down a little bit faster than you'd really ideally want, simply because you're so close to the sea. We've already talked about that one. We've already talked a little bit about that one. 3 Goodall Street. Main thing to think of in Mosgiel is often down to, I don't know the street names off the top of my head, but really it's proximity to water. So we want to, if we can get underneath, we want to check just what the piles are looking like. Sometimes you get water runs. It depends where you are, up the back edge of Mosgiel more so than others. Here it looks like they have resealed the concrete roofing, which is great. That's going to really be preservative for a long time. We've got about 80s-ish vintage aluminium by the looks, some of the original timber. Blockwork, from what we can see, there's looking fine and dandy. Again, very ornate garden. The thing with an ornate garden is it almost always implies an ornate house, and an ornate house implies it's been well looked after. So that's quite good. That's what we want to see. 8 Benicia Street. The things I'm going to be checking on this house primarily are the flashings around each of these windows. The steep roof is going to mean that you get pretty good water escape velocity, but not a huge amount of overhang or eaves, and certainly none on these. But views, it's effectively a clerestory by the looks, which is fantastic. So I'm going to be looking at those things and just really, you've got to be aware that older houses are older. Not perfect and not brand new. Now, this is one I've got to go and have a look at in the next few days. So what am I going to be looking at that one? I think you'll find it's concrete construction garage, which means a full concrete floor right the way through. That just fits the style that we have there, but I'll confirm that when I'm there. Linear up top, brick there, and then concrete down bottom. So that's going to be actually pretty reliable. We want to check any of the flashings from outside to inside and so forth. And we want to check, you expect a little bit of possible cracking and whatnot on driveways on a slope like that. We'll have a good look up there and see what we've got, check what our flashing details are like, check what our penetration details through there are like. If it's timber, certainly, that matters. If it's concrete, it doesn't matter quite so much. Walton Park, Fairfield. So generally I find these to be pretty straightforward, with the exception of obviously access up and about. But that's going to be timber gable ends by the looks on this one. Dichromatic tile roof, yep. So dichromatic tiles are a bit of an interesting exercise. There is a standardised warning that says there can be asbestos in the tar, which the dichromatic is bedded in. That cannot be released, but what it does mean is if you ever remove the dichromatic tile roof, you need to treat it as an asbestos-containing material. By law, you're required to. Adds a little bit of time and cost, but it's not actually that bad. And to be honest, dichromastics you can generally repair and recoat to keep in good order for quite a long time. Things I'll be doing with this one is actually getting some stain or poly or something onto the timberwork down there. Just see that that's weathered that little bit. And that means the bottom edge, because it's vertical, is going to soak up a bit of water. You want to try and treat that. Garages underneath, internal access. I mean, these are really the beginning, really quite well thought out houses. So again, pretty easy to work on, similar construction methodologies to what we use today. I'm not expecting you're going to have a huge amount of issues with this one. You're still going to be checking things like the water tightness of the flue. You see that the flue there exceeds the top of the roof, which is good. You need it. We talked about the lower pitch on another house earlier. aluminium around the place. Aluminium is if it's thermally broken, it's less of a radiator than non-thermally broken single glazed aluminium, which has a very low R value. You can sometimes get some good results by simply putting a low E film on existing glass, but the ideal world, you think about replacing your aluminium with not aluminium. So we've looked at that one, looked at that one, looked at that one, talked about 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 that one. Ooh, what do we got here? 1138 Brighton Road. Now, Brighton, I happen to think, is a very much up-and-coming suburb. But what we can tell you, looking at this one, this is the classic. I just want to confirm that before I make a fool of myself. No, it's not going to let me. Of course it's not. Why would it? Okay, 150, 125, 100. I want to check the cladding on this to make sure what it is. If it's of the vintage, there's a good chance being rusticated hardy plank that it contains asbestos. Again, not the end of the world. It's a really stable substrate. The main thing is you can't take to it with a drill or a grinder or a saw or whatever else without adequately protecting anyway. We can be sort of 80% certain that rusticated hardy plank is, based on my experience. I mean, there's always exceptions, but yeah. So again, wet floor shower. That's just bypass closets, good. Double glazed. That might be UPVC. I quite like UPVC if it is. New lights, flashings. Yeah, so new aluminium, new timber work down there. Looks like they've spent some good time and effort on it. Again, things that they might not have gotten around to on this one are coatings on the roof. It's near the sea. Any of your exterior elements are going to be more exposed to salt and whatnot, breakdown than non. Cool vintage 40s, 50s house. Pretty straightforward, pretty good. Tidy enough. They've certainly tidied it for sale. See nicely stained fencing and everything else, but you just see that little bit of salt action, anodization going on the. Now, another point to note on this one's very, very tall chimney. It looks to be plastered. When it's plastered, there's some support, but you always just want to have a really good close look and make sure that all of the mortar's doing well. Gravel driveway. If we want to be cynical, we're supposed to have 5 metres back from the road crossing point, the white line. 5 metres back is supposed to be sealed to prevent gravel being dragged onto the road. They don't police that, but if somebody complains, you might get a letter saying you have to do it. Listed today, Michael Wood. Okay, what have we got, Mr. Wood? I say, so that's looking like a steel fence, which is okay. Again, steel there. Can't see what those ones are. We've talked about roof tiles extensively already today, so I won't go into that too much more. Big window area means quite a lot of radiant heat loss, which means that would be a really good candidate for some double glazing. Nicely sealed out the back, decking, it's low level, so no consents required for any of that. No real eave there. You measure an eave from the wall to the outside of the spouting. And kitchen's relatively new. Carpet, flooring, all style around here. Newish fire. So single glazed aluminium. That's, yeah, you'll get some gains if you remedy that. One of my personal pet points of pontification. There we go. Personal pet points of pontification. Think very seriously about doing what it appears these guys have and getting a heat pump dryer. Cheaper to run. They don't discharge moisture into the atmosphere. They drain moisture, and you can plumb that into your sink there. They don't have the ducting to clog up that vented dryers do, and they last longer because they run at lower temperatures, so slightly less of a fire risk, cheaper to run, last longer. What's not to like? Don't release moisture into the home. Now, the moisture is actually the thing we really want to avoid from a building perspective, because it just breaks down the paint and everything else faster, and also makes the house more expensive to heat. Shed out here is going to be 60s-ish skyline by the looks. Dead simple. Oftentimes they're quite spanned out for the trusses. Yeah, sometimes you get a bit of rust in the spoutings and whatnot, but again, fairly easy parts to deal with, and if you treat it as a shed, you're probably not too worried about that, realistically. I'd be lying if I said I've ever seen any of them fail unless they're driven into with something. Okay, what else do we have? We've talked about that one already. Haven't talked about this one. Differing brick, no issues with that actually. It's just a design feature. You either love it or you don't. These guys have done continuous spouting, so the spouting's been redone at some point, which is quite neat. The asphalt out here, you see you've got all this lichen and everything on it. Now, I would be spraying that with no more moss, mold and lichen. Wherever you've got asphalt, you can often bring it back, if it's not too bad, by treating it with an asphalt sealer. Now, one of the things I want to see with that happen is it renews the flexibility of the surface of the asphalt, which helps to prevent the asphalt pinholing, which then means cracking, which then means serious breakdown. So it is one of those things that's really worth staying on top of that, because asphalt's not wonderfully cheap to lay. Okay, and we'll do Tanya's house here where we're looking at it. Okay, so retaining wall right out the front. We're going to just check that and make sure we don't have any major cracks. You see these little pinprick holes here? They're drains. Oftentimes they're clogged up at this point in the game because that house was built in 1950, 1960, something like that. So they... Yeah, you can't necessarily expect these to still work. Sometimes you can make them work again by poking something up and down and giving it a jimmy around. You can see that there's been good care taken here. Retaining wall's been painted, baseline's been painted. What we're going to find is that our handrails there don't meet modern standard. We wouldn't expect them to. Really hard to see our windows, but I think we're aluminium. Yeah, aluminium, probably single glazed. Somebody's put in a nice new kitchen. Let's see if we can get another view on that kitchen actually. Heat pump. Tiles. Heat transfer system. Different paint colours. It's just a fairly simple, straightforward house. Yep, you've got your sort of 100-odd clearance from the edge of that to the upright, so that's pretty good, and we can see the splashback continues on that side of the tall end panel as well, so that is good. Just wanted to double check. Yeah, again, simple tidy up. These houses, the things that we would be looking for really in the vintage might be plumbing types. Sometimes you get some old wiring types in these, but if they've put all new lights in, the odds are pretty good they've replaced a lot of the wiring. If they've done carpet and everything else, again, it's a renovation. But you still want to double check just your main board. If you've got a new main board, 90% of it's likely to be there. You might still have one or two old circuits running throughout, but yeah, it's not a biggie to replace one circuit if you need to. That said, hopefully that gives a really good overview of some of the information that your building inspector is going to be looking at when they're looking at houses. We're always going to try and make sure that you learn more out of the deal than we charge you for. This is free. By all means, feel free to teach me how to avoid saying because that one annoys me. I'm going to try and make this a point a few times a week. You typically have a good run of properties listed on a Thursday. Today's Wednesday, so that was pretty light. Hopefully we'll get cleaner and clearer as we do it, but I intend to run on through and teach you a little bits and bobs about property as we go. But for now, I am going to end the stream. If you've got any questions, chuck them in the chat down there, and we'll see if we can be organised enough to get back to them. There's no bad houses, there's only good houses that need some love. That's a terrible catchphrase. I'm sure I'll find a good one of these days. Stitch and time saves 9. That is really a common one with this. Don't overlook maintenance. And don't be afraid to ask. Actually, there's another really good one. Ask expert opinions on what you're trying to do.